90% of the people watching this video are hormonally weak and have adrenal fatigue. And in this video, we're gonna cover all of the things you need to know that is the truth about adrenal fatigue, because let me tell you what, there is a ton of misinformation, miseducation, lies, and just a turd in tinfoil being sold as the magic solution, as if it's the magic ticket to Willy Wonka's factory. But the thing is, it's not. And it's not dark chocolate, it's not free of lead, it's not organic, it's just a turd. And that's what people are learning about adrenal fatigue. They're not learning the correct thing. And so I actually wrote a book called Do I Have Adrenal Fatigue? And the reason why I wrote it is because all the books that are out there, there's pretty much none that I could ethically give to my patients. The only other one that's kind of decent, shout out to Dr. Zodkoy, his is great, but his was more geared, in my opinion, towards veterans and military personnel. But the thing is, since I've written this book, there is actually an ICD-10 diagnosis code, because a lot of times adrenals and adrenal problems were not considered legitimate by conventional mainstream medicine in the past, unless they were on this far end or this far end of the spectrum, which means if you have 0% adrenal function, that means that you have Addison's disease. And if you have a super high functioning overactive adrenal system, that means you have Cushing's syndrome, which is where you get super high cortisol, or with Addison's, very, very low cortisol, which is what JFK had. And the truth is, you want to be somewhere in the middle. And if it's actually a pretty tight range, because if you're a little too high or a little too low, modern medicine will say, you're fine. Your labs look totally normal. Even though we're not even running the adrenal health labs, your labs look totally fine. These really simple, basic labs that cost almost nothing, that make you feel like, with a false sense of security, you're totally fine. Because 50% of people get cancer and their labs look totally fine. 50% of people have a heart attack with normal cholesterol levels. And why do most people have heart attacks? Probably because they have either high blood pressure, so they have a physical stress on their cardiovascular system, they have an emotional stress, which is related to the adrenals, or they have a biochemical stress. There are really only 3 causes of all illness. In old school chiropractic terms, they called it the 3 T's: thoughts, trauma, and toxins. Nowadays, we call it structural, like a triangle: structural, biochemical, and emotional. And the reason why all 3 are so important is because most practitioners don't address all 3. They address just one. You get functional medicine and biochemical, you get therapists, and used to get priests who address emotional stuff and do counseling. And then on the bottom, structure is your physical therapists and your personal trainers and your chiropractors who do sports medicine and rehab and musculoskeletal medicine. Some orthopedic doctors, some DOs, doctors of osteopathy, do that, some massage therapists. But the thing is, very, very few people do all 3. And that's why most people don't get better, is because they're not looking at the big picture perspective. They're not looking at the thoughts, the traumas, and the toxins. They're not looking at structural, chemical, emotional. They're looking at one thing through a tiny little looking glass instead of looking at the big picture perspective. The other thing that's in my book, and I'm going to basically summarize the book in this video for you, is that there's an acronym called FED UP, which we will go through a little bit later. But that's also the big picture of how to view your health. And if you want to fix your adrenals, if you want to fix any problem you have, you actually don't treat the condition. Now, I will teach you how to help your adrenals, and if you're a member, you get the extra expanded super deluxe version of this video. I will teach you and run you through the supplement protocol and what those supplements are for. The membership is for practitioners and coaches and people who are training and learning to be practitioners, because it is more advanced, and that information needs to be included with a consultation with a practitioner or a skilled professional, medical professional. But the thing is, a lot of people are just telling you, take this supplement, take this root, take this herb, or nowadays it's take this medication, do this lab test, do this scan. And it used to be like, take this root, and then it became take this, petroleum-based medication and the root is terrible. And then it became, don't take that petroleum stuff, take this homeopathic remedy. And then it became, the homeopathic is crazy, don't take the homeopathic, take this petroleum-based vitamin. Then it became, don't take that vitamin, take this superfood. Then it became, don't take that superfood, eat this root. And we've kind of gone full circle back to the root. No pun intended. But the thing is, we have to understand, is adrenal fatigue real? How do you know if you have it? What is it? And how do you fix it? What do you do to get better? Which is what we're going to cover in this video. So, back up. 90% of America is not well. I would argue probably 95% or more, maybe even 99% of America is not well. And it depends on what you define as well. Is it optimal or is it alive? Or is it optimal or is it suboptimal? Is it all the people? Maybe you're considered healthy if you have no microplastics, no heavy metals, no mycotoxins, but that's not a person who is living in the world. If you lived in a bubble and were a bubble boy, you could probably, for your entire life, as long as the bubble was not made of plastic, you could probably achieve those things. Maybe a glass bubble. And your mother lived in a glass bubble, and your mother's mother's mother lived in a glass bubble. And some people point to the Amish and they're like, they're super healthy because they have the best poop. Maybe that's the real turd in tinfoil, is the Amish poop. They could probably sell that on the black market, and they kind of do, because the Amish eat so well and they're so isolated from the modern world, which is generally toxic, that the Amish community is where they tend to get fecal transplant matter. So fecal transplants are a new up-and-coming field of medicine, and it means that if you're going to use someone's poop or stool in order to repopulate somebody else's gut, they take poop from one person and put it into somebody else's bum. That's basically the crude thing, but that's for people to understand. That's how it works. And so the Amish do that because they're less tainted. But even then, the Amish have mycotoxins, the Amish have certain toxins, and they have problems just like everybody else does as well. So there is no perfect, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, everybody has some hormonal weakness, everybody has some nervous system dysregulation, everybody has some adrenal dysfunction, and whether it's 1% or 10% or 100% varies person to person. But none of us are perfect. All this to say, true health is really defined not as perfect health or, true or perfect health. It's not defined as this optimal goal of like extreme 100% purity. That's not what health is. Health is actually about balancing your authentic self, your inner nature, with the external nature. What does that mean? It means living in harmony internally with your external world. Ironically, to be alive, you have to actually, on a cellular level, be separate and work hard to be differentiated from the external world. So if your cells open, you are now dead. If all your cells just open, you're dead. If they're closed and your sodium potassium pumps are working and the internal milieu of your cells is different than the external milieu outside of your body and those cells, that is exactly what defines life on a biologic, biochemical level for physiology. The thing is, it's not really about pure balance because that's death. It's about harmony. So living in harmony with your nature, which means your community, your society, your career, your relationships, the substances around you, the nature around you. Living in harmony with your external nature is what constitutes health on a structural, chemical, emotional plane, mind, body, and spirit. And then being in harmony with your internal nature on a structural, chemical, emotional, mind, body, spirit level is also what it means to have really good health. So the thing is, a lot of people externally appear to be extremely healthy, but internally they are not at all. We all know those people in Hollywood, celebrities who look 20, 40 years younger than they really are, but internally they have the blackest soul you've probably ever seen. They have internal depression. It's like the Robin Williams, where they have this smile and this beautiful external appearance, but internally they are suffering beyond comprehension. And so When people get healthy on a true mind, body, spirit level, first they get healthy externally through their actions. Then they get healthy by having correct or good, healthy verbal use. Like the words that they say then become more positive, more healthy, more high conscious, high vibration, whatever you want to call it. And then their thoughts become healthy. Now, most people never get to that stage. They're working just on being a good person externally. Then they work on saying things that are appropriate, and then they work on themselves. And let me tell you what, I've been on this journey working on my subconscious emotional state and my adrenals for over a decade, and I still worry and work on some of my actions and my thoughts. Now, they've gotten way better than they were when I was younger, a decade ago before starting this journey, but it's not about perfection. We are all a work in progress. So the goal should be improvement over time, not perfection. Health is a journey, not a perfect place you get to. So how might you even know that you have adrenal fatigue? And if 90% of America has either a metabolic syndrome or a cardiovascular condition or a hormonal condition, then this is most people. But how do you know? If you're dealing with chronic stress, if you're dealing with, chronic infections or an autoimmune condition or an inflammatory condition or fatigue of any kind, sleep issues, energy issues, gut issues, you probably have an adrenal dysfunction to some degree. Now, the current ICD-10 code that is now accepted, even though when I wrote this book, there was no ICD-10 code for adrenal dysfunction, just Addison's and Cushing's. Now we have an ICD-10 code called burnout, which is, let me look up the actual ICD-10 code, Z73.0. ICD-10 factors influencing health status and conduct with health services, but it indicates a state of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced effectiveness caused by prolonged or excessive stress. You might ask yourself, where does the word adrenal come from? Well, maybe it's adrenaline, right? Adrenaline? No, adrenaline comes from the adrenal glands, but it's adrenal. So adrenal means on top of the renal gland, and renal is kidney. So if you have your kidney bean here, the adrenal is like a little tiny party hat that sits right on top, a little triangle gland. It's very small, but very powerful. So adrenal, it's on top of the renal gland, and it is responsible for the 4 S's. The salt, sex, sugar, and stress hormones in your body. So there's 3 stages of adrenal fatigue, and it regulates the 4 hormones of salt, sex, sugar, and stress hormones. We can get into the biochemical nitty-gritty, but it's not really necessary. What you need to know, though, is that if you have issues where you're craving salt or you can't tolerate salt, that's usually an adrenal problem. Sex hormones. If you have a really strong libido, like excessive libido, that's usually from excess testosterone in women or PCOS or old trauma or masculinity issues, but really high libido or low libido are also signs of adrenal dysfunction. Most men these days, even in their 20s and 30s, are starting to get low testosterone, especially men over 35 are getting very low testosterone. Testosterone levels have dropped tremendously from where they were decades ago or a century ago. And we wonder why men are weak right now. That's one of the reasons. There's lots of hormone disruptors out in the world and endocrine disruptors and toxins that are lowering testosterone, plus the food supply, lack of sleep, blue light knocking outside. Again, the internal external nature not being balanced because people aren't going into nature. They're sitting indoors with fake lighting and fake air conditioning and fake temperatures, and we're wondering why we're not living in a true healthy way. Because in order to be truly healthy, you can't be fake healthy. And the boxes we imprison ourselves in are fake healthy. So get outside, open your windows, get fresh air, turn off your HVAC, but make sure your house, of course, doesn't get moldy depending on where you're at, because the humidity has to be controlled, because most boxes that we live in are super prone to mold. And they're not natural materials. Drywall was not what we were meant to live in. And so and with insulation, all this stuff, it's not natural, and so because of such, nature and mold tries to often decompose it and break it down, because that's what mold is meant to do. It's meant to kill and destroy and decay and take it away and rebuild something new. So anyways, back to the 4 S's: salt, sex, sugar, and stress. Sugar. So that relates to your cortisol hormone, which many of you probably know about. But your cortisol should be a really slow rise in the morning to wake you up. So it starts rising before you ideally even wake up out of bed. So cortisol starts rising, which causes your sugar to rise as well, and it gives you energy. And then you get a peak in the morning, and then it slowly dips back down and kind of levels out. And then at bedtime, it drops back down so you can have low energy and go to sleep. It's also called your CAR, cortisol awakening response, where the cortisol goes up so you can wake up and be happy and energized and fresh in the morning. So if you're not happy, energized, fresh, excited, positive for the day ahead, then you have no adrenal health. Like, your adrenal health is not in good standing. And that is where many people are, unfortunately. They're not waking up looking to build the life of their dreams. They're not waking up looking forward to the day ahead. They either don't have anything they're excited about, or they just don't have good adrenal function because they're oftentimes relying on external battery pack adrenals rather than their own 2 little adrenals on top of their kidneys. So salt, sex, sugar, and stress. So the sugar part, if you crave sugar or crave salt or crave sex or don't crave them at all, that can all be signs of adrenal issues. But especially with sugar and salt, people who crave it all the time, whether it's tortilla chips or salty food or Thai food or Chinese food or French fries, most people crave salt and or simple carbs and sugar, sometimes even together. Salted breadsticks, it's like an adrenal nightmare. But it can be good if it's good quality salt, because you actually need salt for your adrenals. That's why the kidney and adrenals crave salt, is because it actually helps them, but everything needs to be in harmony. Too much salt is not good. Too little salt is also just as harmful. So it has to be balanced appropriately. Stress, the last of the S's. Adrenaline does come from the adrenal glands, which secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are types of adrenaline in your body. And so if you are under prolonged stress, or you have adapted to stress, because stress is really just defined as adapting to a new change, but the adaptation to something new, whether it's during the pandemic and COVID, people had to adapt to not going to work now, or new traffic or routes, or more traffic or less traffic, or a new job or a different job, whatever it was. Adapting to change is what stress is defined as. So a lot of us have had many changes in the last 5 years or longer. And so the more change you have, that creates stress for your body. And if your body and your brain and your psychology and your feelings and your emotions, if you do not have time to fully feel those changes and process those feelings, then they often store in your body. Your body has a physiologic neurotransmitter memory of everything that has ever happened to you, and it also has memory or records from 7 to 11 or more generations before you. So like me, if you have some small amount of Jewish ancestry or large amount, then you have genetic stores of fear and anxiety and stress and adrenaline response from the Holocaust. Or if you have military veterans in your ancestry, you have that stored. If you have trauma or abuse, that's stored in your cells on some deep level. There are, of course, ways to heal some of these things, but we have the issues in the tissues. The only way to heal it is to feel it. You literally have to feel it to heal it. You can't just intellectualize your way through therapy or talk therapy. You have to do somatic therapy, or some of the things we'll talk about in a little bit, to fully clear that out. The book The Body Keeps the Score is a very great explanation of this, but most people try to think their way through having negative thoughts, or think their way through negative feelings and emotions, or think their way through mental health conditions to try to understand it. But like if you go up to a child, right, you would never, and they were crying, you would never say, tell me why you're crying, right? You would be probably a little psychotic or sociopathic if that's what you did to child. Tell me why you're crying. What caused you to cry? You would go up and say, oh, I'm so sorry, and just be with them and hold them and care for them. That's what actually fixes emotions, is love and care and holding space. And we don't, in our culture, know how to do that for ourselves. We barely know how to do it for others. You don't want to go up to a child and just mansplain to them, which is often how husbands deal with their wives' feelings, right? They just try to mansplain them. They're like, no, you shouldn't feel that way, right? And that creates lots of problems. And so men are not allowed to feel, and women are often mansplained to and not given the ability for anyone to hold space for them. We don't live in, multi-generational households anymore. We don't have as much community or personal interaction. We're all so busy trying to make more money, win the rat race, keep up with the Joneses, that we just don't prioritize emotional connection with our community. That can also create lots of stress, which creates lots of adrenal fatigue. And so what happens to people? Well, there are 3 stages to adrenal fatigue. When they have these issues, if you think you might have these issues, there are 3 stages, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But first, I want to go through all of the symptoms in my adrenal questionnaire in the book. There is a short adrenal survey on my website. If you go to drbradleycampbell.com under resources adrenal quiz, I'll put the link in the show notes here. But if you go to the resources on the website menu and adrenal quiz, there's a short little quiz to tell you if you have adrenal fatigue. But let me run through some of the questionnaire symptoms that could be causing an issue. Stay with me, because there are 86 for men and 90 for women. But if you have, let's say, even like more than 10 of these, that's kind of a problem, right? Especially if you have more than, let's say 15. If you have 15 or more of these, as I'm reading off, just count on your hands. If you have more than 15 of these, that's a problem. It doesn't matter if it's like sometimes or all the time. If you experience this on a semi-regular basis, that's a problem. 15 or more. Ready? So let's go through number 1. I have a hard time waking up or getting out of bed in the morning. I have recently experienced long periods of stress. I have recently experienced trauma. Number 4, I have driven myself to exhaustion. Number 5, I overwork with little play or relaxation for extended periods. Number 6, I have recently had extended severe or recurring respiratory infections. Number 7, I tend to gain weight easily. Number 8, I have a history of alcoholism or drug abuse. Number 9, I use coffee, caffeine, tea, or energy drinks to get through my day. Number 10, I have an energy crash around 12 to 3 p.m. Number 11, I often need a nap during the day. Number 12, I can't fall asleep easily or stay up late because I am not tired. Number 13, most of my energy comes at night. Number 14, I can't lose weight with diet and exercise. Number 15, I wake up in the middle of the night. Number 16, I crave carbs, sweets, snacks, or desserts, especially after a meal. 17, I crave salt or salty, crunchy foods. 18, I have environmental or chemical sensitivities. 19, I have 1 or more chronic illnesses. 20, I have diabetes of any type. 21, low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. 22, I get irritable when I haven't eaten in a while or hangry. 23, I get anxious, nervous, or panicky. 24, I get worried or irritable. 25, I have low motivation or feel heavy. 26, I have low blood pressure, under 114/74. 27, I get dizzy when standing up too fast or when I stand up for long periods. 28, my feet are tired, sore, or hurt at the end of the day. 29, I have flat feet. 30, I have sweaty feet. 31, I have tight Achilles, calves, or Achilles issues. 32, I have loose ligaments, ligament injury, ligament strains. 33, I get muscle or stomach cramps, especially with exercise. 34, I get shin splints on the front or the sides or the back. 35, my low back hurts. 36, my upper back hurts. 37, my neck hurts. 38, I get knee pain on the inside of the knee, on the medial side. 39, my joints, knuckles, back, ankles, etc. crack easily. 40, I have been told I have tendonitis, rotator cuff issues, bursitis, arthritis. 41, I have chronic aches or pains. 42, I experience brain fog. 43, I have problems with my vision, get floaters in my eyes. 44, I have ringing in my ears or tinnitus. 45, I get vertigo or dizziness. 46, I have allergies that I didn't have until after age 12. 47, I have exercise-induced asthma. 48, I have non-exercise induced asthma. 49, I have acne. 50, I get dark circles under my eyes. 51, I get PVCs, heart fluttering, or atrial fibrillation. 52, I get stress-induced chest pain or tightness. 53, I get stress-induced high blood pressure or white coat syndrome. 54, I get dry skin. 55, I get thin skin. 56, I get skin rashes or hives. 57, I get eczema or psoriasis. 58, I have red bumps on the back of my arms. 59, I have rosy cheeks. 60, I have swollen cheeks or cheekbones. 61, I have a fat deposit or lump on the upper back, lower neck. 62, I have purple stretch marks. 63, I have varicose veins. 64, I have dark skin spots, patches anywhere on the body. 65, I get ankle swelling not from heart or kidney disease. 66, I have sweaty palms or clammy hands. 67, I have sweaty feet or clammy feet. 68, I have cold hands or feet. 69, I have sinus problems. 70, I get sick, colds, or flus more than normal. 71, it takes me longer than 2 days to recover from sickness or illness. 72, I had a recent injury that took over 2 days to recover. 73, I have dandruff. 74, I have hemorrhoids. 75, I have white skin patches or spots on my body. 76, I have lower sex drive or desire. 77, I get headaches or migraines. 78, I get light sensitive. 79, I need to wear sunglasses outside. 80, I get low mood. 81, I'm sensitive to loud noises, music, or yells. 82, I have trouble getting pregnant or struggle with infertility. 83, I urinate frequently. 84, when I drink lots of water, it goes right through me, aka a small bladder. 85, I get up at night to urinate. 86, I have IBS, stomach aches, leaky gut, digestion issues worsened by stress. For the females only. 87 is I am having early menopause or perimenopause. 88, I am having a difficult menopause. 89, I get PMS or PMDD. And 90, I have an irregular cycle, timing, flow, etc. So if you were listening to those and you're like, wow, I have more than 10 or 15 of those, if maybe you had all 86 or 90, then you probably have a major adrenal problem. Generally, if you had 15 or more, I'd say you have at least some considerable adrenal issues. If you have 15 to 30, that's moderate, definite adrenal issues. If you have more than 30 of those, that means you have major adrenal issues. So, what are the stages of adrenal fatigue? So Hans Selye was the first to talk about the general adaptation syndrome or stress syndromes, but I like to call them the squirrel, turtle, sloth, and owl stages. There's 3 main ones, probably the squirrel, turtle, and the sloth, but the owl is a little bonus stage. As a fun aside, my grandma actually gave me an owl. Look at this. Because it was killed and taxidermied. So I like to say this is one of these weird things that I just keep because my grandma used to love this thing called it Eloise Poindexter, and it's a great horned owl. It was not hunted. It died naturally probably by a car on the side of the road, and then was taxidermied because you can't actually hunt those legally in this country, but kind of wild. But the owl stage I have partially because my grandma read my book before she passed and passed that down to me before she passed away, but I have an owl actually tattooed on myself as well, and partially why there's a phoenix and an owl here is the owl was our nonprofit logo when we had the nonprofit, and for me the owl symbolizes wisdom and learning. It also symbolizes the night, dealing with our deeper feelings and emotions and our stress that we can't see, because you remember, stress is a physiologic response and the issues are in your tissues, and if you're not dealing with them on a regular basis, you're missing out. So let's talk about the stages. So stage 1, the squirrel stage. This is basically fight or flight. It's someone who is really in that first stage where they're overly stressed. They're high adrenaline, they're high stress, they're go, go, go mode all the time. They don't slow down, they don't rest. They go super hard until they collapse and fall asleep super fast at night. The squirrel stage describes a person who flits around, is constantly on the go, and feels chronically stressed and hyper aroused. They live in a sympathetic dominant state. This means that these patients are always overly energized and unable to slow down and rest well. Many squirrels don't realize they are squirrels. That's probably most of the world is in that stage. But nowadays we're getting more in stage 2 of 3, which is the turtle stage. This describes a person who is slow and fatigued. Sometimes they move like a slow turtle on land. Other times they move like a fast turtle underwater. They tend to pop in and out of their shell in terms of emotions and feelings, alternating between feeling good or bad. Turtles often realize they're having issues because it's kind of the wired and tired. So if they're on land, they're tired. If they're in water, they're wired. So there's some high energy and some fatigue starting to happen where they're kind of oscillating back and forth between good energy and terrible energy. Stage 3 is the sloth stage. This describes a person who is barely moving. They consistently feel wiped out and struggle to get out of bed. The sloth feels heavy, burdened, fatigued, with the rare burst of activity. Sloths usually know they have a major problem on their hands. The stage 4 bonus stage, the owl stage, describes a person who is tired during the day but gets a second wind at night, before bedtime or during the middle of the night, often struggling with fatigue and insomnia in an endless loop. Basically means their cortisol rhythm, rather than going up in the morning and down, is backwards, where it's low during the day and then goes up at night. Oops, now I'm awake all night. So it's kind of people with a reverse of their normal adrenal cortisol rhythm or energy. So don't get discouraged by the stage you're in. This just means you're a typical American or a typical person in the modern world. I would argue that our major pharmaceutical, retail, and political companies are pressuring you into consuming stimulants and depressants because you will likely become a loyal returning customer, which is good for the economy, which is good for everybody, right? You're just a cash cow or like a zombie without their drugs. And so, you become dependent on them, which is not what health freedom is about. It's not what health empowerment is about. But don't get discouraged. The more you can admit and recognize and acknowledge that you have something to work on, the better your life can become. It's like being in a fog for a prolonged period of time, and one day the fog starts to lift and you realize you were surrounded by all these other options that you never even knew existed. Suddenly you see the world clearly for what it is. Before you're fully out of the fog, you must heal your adrenals. Now, for my members, we actually have a new course that just launched this year called Clear the Fog. What that's actually about is teaching people in depth how to address the whole person. Like I said before, don't treat the condition, treat the person who has the condition, and that's how you get miracles. That's what the Clear the Fog course is about. It's how to get structurally, chemically, emotionally better so that you can heal all of your mind, body, and spirit, all of your structural, chemical, emotional problems, and see the big picture perspective and know where to start and know what to do rather than just guessing. If you're not testing, you're guessing, right? It's important to test. It's important to go through that quiz. It's important to get maybe my Do I Have Adrenal Fatigue book. It's important to maybe join the membership and do some of these tests, do some of the blood work you can get if you're a member, or find a practitioner skilled in adrenal fatigue and adrenal dysfunction. Not one who just gaslights people into saying that it's just all mitochondrial dysfunction, or it's just all nutrient deficiency, or it's just all, slight imbalances. The thing is, adrenal dysfunction has been around for thousands of years, but it was just labeled as something different. So in traditional Chinese medicine and in Ayurvedic medicine, adrenal fatigue has been around. In Chinese medicine, which I studied going to acupuncture and herbal school, it was called kidney yang deficiency. There's yin yang. Yin is the cool, yang is the hot. The kidneys were conceptualized in primordial ancient times as this, like a pot or a stew, or like a witch's brew. But imagine like a big bowl or a big pot filled with a soup. That's your kidney. It regulates the water, which is inside of that pot. But the thing that actually, the fire that heats that pot up is your adrenals. So it's part of the fire element, but it's the fire aspect of the water element. The kidney and bladder were the water element, but it was the yang, or the fiery part of the water element. It's also included somewhat in the fire element of the heart, small intestine, pericardium, and triple heater because of the adrenal thyroid links. And the triple burner is basically the three parts of your torso, your lower torso, mid torso, upper torso. It was balancing the heat in your body from left, right, top to bottom. And your thyroid plays the biggest role in that triple burner or Sanjiao meridian function. But the bottom third is regulated by that kidney yang, or the adrenals. So it's the fire that keeps you going. And most people use stimulants or sugar or salt or even adaptogens and supplements to keep that fire going. But it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. What you really need for your adrenals are proper sleep and light and other things we'll talk about in a little bit to help balance your blood sugar and give you a nice wood-burning log to fuel your entire metabolism. Most people can't lose weight. They're super inflamed because that fire, that cortisol, also acts as an anti-inflammatory. So if you take steroids when you're sick and you feel better, that means that you have an adrenal problem underlying everything, because you should not need external steroids except in life-threatening, critical, acute, emergency, crisis states in order to get over any type of illness or infection or chronic issue. So if you take a steroid when you have a sinus infection or you're sick and you feel better, it's because your adrenals are hormonally weak. And that's where most people are at. So yes, adrenal fatigue is real. In ancient terms, it was called the kidney yang deficiency, but it's also been understood and treated by Western complementary or alternative or holistic healers for almost 50 to 100 years, and with great success. So it is very useful. It is a very helpful thing to understand if you have adrenal dysfunction, and if you can figure out which stage you're in, that's also very helpful. You can figure out what stage you're in by testing. Remember, I said again, if you're not testing, you're guessing. So it's really important to test for adrenal issues. And how do you test for adrenal issues? Well, let's go to page 112 in my book here. So to test for it, often the easiest way is to look at a blood test. The most important tests are a CMP, Comprehensive Metabolic Panel, DHEA-S, or DHEA sulfate, cortisol, fasting in the morning, testosterone, pregnenolone, fasting glucose, and a CBC with differential. Now, the pregnenolone is not necessarily crucial. The CBC, not crucial, but especially the DHEA, cortisol, testosterone are all really important. And so for members, we can go over the lab results section to help them understand what those ranges are, because it's a little different in every country. It's a little complicated and it's different based on age and a lot of factors. Again, different medications and supplements and things that you're doing or taking can impact those too. But you can also look at the full body by looking also at progesterone, prolactin, estradiol, FSH, LH, T3, T4, free T3, free T4, TSH, antithyroid peroxidase, antithyroglobulin, reverse T3, iron, ferritin, B12 folate, vitamin D, HSCRP, also known as cardiac sensitivity, CRP, homocysteine, a lipid panel, IgG, IgM, IgA, ANA, and ENA, and cystatin C, which is a good kidney add-on. But there's also saliva testing for your adrenals, which can be very useful, and dried urine testing, often called Dutch, is the most popular one right now. So a Dutch complete test is useful to look at your cortisol response and your adrenal response. If you want to just do a urine test, you can also do a saliva test and spit in a little tube 4, 3, 5, 6, 7 times a day, and that'll tell you your cortisol and hormones throughout the day. But the blood test in the morning fasting is a good first start, because most people have either high cortisol or low cortisol, or they usually have low DHEA or low testosterone. Because your adrenals make DHEA, which converts in, and pregnenolone, which converts into testosterone, converts into your other hormones. The reason why we say a lipid panel is because if you have low cholesterol, then you're going to have low hormones as well. So what other ways can you know besides the more expensive testing? Well, you can find out by going in a somewhat dark room and taking a flashlight. Like, let's say if you were to do this, take a flashlight and shine it in your eye, the pupil should get smaller and stay small for at least 10 seconds. Some people say longer, that's kind of ridiculous, but it should get smaller, at least 6, definitely in an ideal world, at least 10 seconds. So the pupil, the black part, should get smaller with light and contract, and it should stay there for at least 10 seconds and then get bigger. Now, most people, when you shine a light in their eye, it's going to get smaller and then open right back up. Or it'll do something like this. It'll get smaller and then it'll go and then kind of give up. It's almost like the muscles that are, which is what's really happening, the muscles that are making it smaller tire out and it opens back up. It's really a midbrain problem, this midbrain dysfunction in the body, where the eye and the the eye constriction, the pupil constriction muscles kind of integrate. Eye things in general are quite complicated from a neurologic standpoint, but that's one test you can do, and most people fail it. So you want to do it in a really bright room, but if you do it in a somewhat dark room or not in direct light, where your pupils are not already super small, then that's a really great test. Another test you can do is check your blood pressure, because too high or too low blood pressure can be a sign of adrenal issues. So what you do is you lay on your back for 2 minutes, take your blood pressure. Use an automatic cuff. I like Omron, O-M-R-O-N. And then what you do is stand up fairly quickly. Now, if you get lightheaded or dizzy or nauseous, or you know that's you, be careful you don't pass out, because someone with really bad adrenal fatigue will turn into a POTS patient, P-O-T-S. And postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome is something that is basically a sign of major nervous system and adrenal dysfunction. But if that's you, if you have anemia, that's why those tests were also in the labs I mentioned, then adrenal issues are gonna get worse. So stand up fairly quickly, and right after you stand up, take the blood pressure again. And ideally, your blood pressure goes up, because when you're standing up, you need higher blood pressure to get the blood to work against gravity to flow up to your head, which is why if it's not working, if you have anemia, or if you have adrenal issues, or your blood pressure drops because of adrenal fatigue or something else, then you're gonna get lightheaded and maybe even pass out, have a vasovagal syncope. So a lot of people walk around with dizziness coming from adrenal issues, or lightheadedness or nausea coming from adrenal issues. Now, there's of course many other reasons why, but that's one primary reason why it happens to a lot of people. So adrenal fatigue over time can even cause the crystals to form in the ear, then cause BPPV, because it's a kidney adrenal related problem. So your blood pressure should ideally go up about 6 to 12 points on the systolic number, which is the high one. So if you're 120 over 80 and it went up to 126 or 132 over 80 or 90, that's great. That top number, the systolic, should go up. If it goes up way too high, like 15, 20 points, that means that there's probably a hyperactive adrenal state or high stress. Many people, it goes up barely, not at all, or it actually will drop in blood pressure when someone stands up. That is another home sign of adrenal fatigue. Another way is to look at the very end of your back, where the bottom of your ribs are, or like stand up and look at your back. Let's say my ribs, the lower rib wraps right around here. If you go towards the middle of the back and kind of rub in here, if that's really tender, that's another sign of adrenal fatigue. Now, if I have too much caffeine, which is an adrenal stimulant, that area will actually cramp on me. So a lot of people get arthritis and they get tight fascia because their adrenals are dysfunctional. And the reason why is because your adrenals crave B vitamins, which your fascia needs. They crave vitamin C, which you need for collagen formation. So your adrenals are the #1 user of vitamin C in your body. They're the most highly concentrated source of vitamin C in your body. And so if you have adrenal fatigue, you typically get a vitamin C deficiency. And you need that vitamin C to make collagen. So the fascia and arthritis and joint pain and things like that can all be related, and especially lower back stuff can be adrenal fatigue. In Chinese medicine, kidney deficiency or kidney yang deficiency causes low back pain, knee pain, foot pain, plantar fasciitis, bunions, all of that. Now, bunions can also be liver and digestive issues, but can cause all of those patterns. And then the upper back tension or neck tension is typically from high adrenal stress. Poor posture is actually often a sign of either negativity and depression, because someone's just down all the time, or their adrenals are super weak. They're not sleeping well, they're not breathing well, they're just in a nervous system dysregulated state, because the adrenals play a role not just with themselves, but they play a role with the entire hormonal cascade and the nervous system, because your stress state of your sympathetic parasympathetic balance can cause you to release more adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Or if you are super stressed, when or if you are more stressed, whether it's taking an exam in school, or talking to your boss about getting a raise, or you haven't slept, or it's a good stress like the birth of a child, or someone new that you're dating that you're super excited about and you got butterflies in your stomach, all that stress can cause a sympathetic dominant state and can be a little hard for your body. But the adrenals relate to the nervous system. So when someone has adrenal dysfunction, they often have, a sympathetic parasympathetic imbalance as well, because sympathetic state is that first active high adrenaline state, and that middle state is a parasympathetic and sympathetic problem, and the parasympathetic collapse or low parasympathetic or parasympathetic dominance is that last sloth burnout type of stage. A lot of people also relate this to the polyvagal theory in trauma healing, which relates people to different parts of the nervous system, but the adrenal dysfunction and polyvagal theory basically are exactly the same. So people with trauma or a high ACEs score also typically have adrenal dysfunction. Speaking of that, let's go through the ACEs right now. So if you want to find your ACEs score, it's much easier. It's only 10 questions. So you can find out what your ACEs score means very easily online. So ACEs score interpretation. Generally, a score of 0 out of 10, you get 1 point. So hold up while you're watching. 1 point for each of these 10 questions. And then we'll go over the results, what that means after. So the first question of 10, did a parent or other adult in the household you grew up in, often or very often, swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you? Or did they act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Number 2, did a parent or other adult in the household, often or very often, push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Number 3, did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you or have you touch their body in a sexual way? Or attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? Number 4, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? Or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Number 5, did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you? Or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Number 6, were your parents ever separated or divorced? Number 7, was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Or sometimes, often, or very often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard? Or ever repeatedly hit at least a few times or threatened with a gun or knife? Number 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Number 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Number 10, did a household member go to prison? Add up those 10 scores. 0 to 3 is low, considered low risk. Doesn't mean you don't have emotional stress trapped in your body. The issues are still in those tissues. The memory of those things are physiologically there in your neurotransmitters and your neurohormones, but you don't have a high trauma score via the ACEs, which is a general screening method. If you have a score of 4 to 6, that's moderate risk, and 7 or higher is quite high. Most people with 4 or higher are twice as likely to develop heart disease and 3 times as likely to develop chronic lung disease or autoimmune conditions or other things. So the ACEs score is extremely important. So even having a 4 could drastically increase your risk of a lot of different issues. And of course, you could have a perfect score and still have trauma, still have PTSD, still have complex PTSD, because there's a lot of other ways, not just those 10 most common or basic ways, that you could have trauma. I want to re-mention that stress is an issue in your tissues. Stress is a body response more than a mental response. So the mind and body are so tightly linked, but stress creates tension in your body, right? Your shoulders tighten, your back, your neck can tense up, your posture can get worse, you can start hunching over, which is how a lot of older people look. They look stressed, right? Just by their response. For someone whose shoulders are down, their posture is good, their arms are back, they're looking more upward to the sky, they're probably much happier, they're less stressed, they're more calm, they're more relaxed, they're more positive, they're more confident. But stress is definitely a physiologic or physical problem as much as it is mental emotional. Now you can mentally emotionally control some of that stress response, but not entirely. We don't want to tell people, that their stress, their trauma response was their fault. Now, it is your responsibility to learn, once you know certain things, how to then go about and fix the trauma that happened to you, or how to regulate your body nervous system afterwards, how to set healthy boundaries, how to heal, how to repair, how to live again in this world in a healthy way, and how to not let those things define you, but how to rewrite your story as the hero rather than the victim, because we are all victims of circumstance to some degree, sometimes great victims, sometimes just occasional victims. We've all been victimized, but we all also have a role to play, sometimes in what happened, sometimes in 0% in what happened, but in terms of how we can then reply and respond. right? We'll all get kicked down, but how many people get back up and heal and actually grow stronger because of the struggles and challenges that they've had? Some people don't have the financial or economic resources. Some people don't have the time. Some people don't, like, there's certainly socioeconomic factors that matter, but a lot of these things you can actually do for free yourself or for a very low cost now, which is amazing. So Pavlov's dog, if you remember, it was basically something where Pavlov was a scientist, a Russian physiologist, Ivan Pavlov, who discovered something called classical conditioning, or a conditioned reflex. So what he did was he basically would ring a bell and give a dog some steak or like really good food or a treat. And so every time he would give the dog something really delectable, he would ring the bell. And he would do that so many times that eventually, when he rang the bell, the dog would salivate. It's like the same thing if I were to tell you, okay, close your eyes. Just go with me for a second. Close your eyes while you're watching this video, unless you're driving or, hopefully you're not doing surgery on somebody. But if you were able to, close your eyes and imagine biting into a lemon. Now, your mouth probably puckered and started salivating just from the thought of biting into a lemon. Why? Because it's such a strong stimulus, a strong memory in your body, that you physically started to react as if you had bitten into one without having bitten into one. The same thing happens when you watch the news, when you watch assassinations, when you watch murder, when you watch horror movies. It's a stress response. So horror movies, video games, your body does not know the difference between watching it and it actually happening. Even just thinking about it, it doesn't know the difference. So if you're thinking about death and murder and crime and all these things all the time, your body is in a stress response, which is why I have so much gratitude for all the first responders, all of the people who are hospital workers, all the people who work in the armed services and the military and the police force and the fire department and all these first responders, all the counselors and therapists who work with people with severe issues. They are in it all the time. They are in stress. So it's even more important for them to get treatment, to heal, to know how to mitigate their own risk factors of stress. So even, being tickled, right? If someone tells you, gets close, and you think that you're gonna get tickled, it sometimes tickles before they even touch you. Same thing, like you start salivating just from smelling certain things before even tasting it. Even just imagining biting into a lemon would make you have a physical reaction. So stress is not just mental, it's not in your head. Your head controls some of it, but it's also a very physical, physiologic response. And you cannot fully decouple the mind from the body, even though a lot of doctors wish to do so or believe that we can do so. So, let's say you had an ex who traumatized you, who was abusive. And let's say they used to wear a certain cologne, or they had tattoos, or they wore white V-neck shirts, undershirts all the time. Then if you were to see somebody with that smell, or any sort of tattoo, or any sort of white V-neck, or just a white shirt in general, it might put your body into a stress response the same way that Pavlovians ring the bells with the steak. If you learn to associate those things in your brain in order to protect yourself, which is a useful thing, then when you see or smell or hear something they used to do, or hear someone with the same accent they used to have, you might tense up and go into a stress response. The only way to clear that out of your system is to realize that it's potentially not protective or helping you anymore, and to two, work on your subconscious. Most therapists only work on your conscious, not your subconscious. But NET and somatic therapies and trauma therapists, they know how to actually work on it. You have to feel it to heal it, but you have to work with the subconscious as well. My favorite way to do this is through NET, neuro-emotional technique, but you have to really understand that there can be many subtle triggers that you're not consciously aware of that are stressing your subconscious out, creating these patterns. Because I've had patients who are really good counselors and therapists come in major adrenal fatigue, but they feel fine. Logically, their thoughts are good, their life is good, they don't have any acute stress, but they're getting slowly triggered by all these old things in their life. And they're like, wow, I thought I, talked about that stress and let it go. Well, consciously you did, but your subconscious is still holding on to all of these issues in your tissues. And we all have it. And it's not about being perfect. Again, it's just about slowly chipping away at those layers of problems. And the more you can find someone who does really great neuroemotional technique, the better you will be. That's why I did NET every week for 10 years. And it helped me completely transform who I am. I get triggered almost never now, which is great. It allows me to expand more, to push myself, to work harder, to work longer, to work better, to work more efficiently, to not be as bothered or mentally distracted. I don't have to push through things in order to achieve or accomplish great things in my life because I've cleared out almost all of my primary triggers. And if you come to an NET person with intention to work on stuff, that is extremely valuable. If people knew what that true value of NET neuroemotional technique really was, people would be there all the time, every week, for the rest of their lives. But people don't understand that it's way more valuable than therapy, way more valuable than chiropractic, way more valuable than acupuncture, because it's really addressing your root triggers. So just because you feel fine does not mean you are healthy. That is the biggest lie in healthcare. Just because you feel fine does not mean you're healthy. Now, if you had the adrenal symptoms, if you have a high ACEs score and you haven't worked through your trauma, then obviously you don't feel fine. And 95% of Americans don't feel fine, but a lot of them do feel fine, and then they get cancer, they get heart disease, and that's stage 1 adrenal dysfunction. They feel fine, but they're actually stressed. A lot of people don't feel fine and they have issues, but there's people who feel fine, especially adult men who have learned to, cut off all embodiment and be super disconnected from their body physically and emotionally, have zero body awareness. People don't know how to move well, they don't know how to breathe well, they don't even know how they are breathing, and they have so many issues that they just disconnect from themselves. Again, if to be healthy means being aware of and being in harmony with your internal and external nature, and a lot of people don't even know who they are, what their internal nature is, they don't spend enough time alone reflecting, and they don't have that body awareness. If there's one magic pill I could give everybody, it would be self-awareness. But a lot of people just don't have it, and the way to get it is to see a practitioner or join my membership or do something really valuable to help you start to gain the awareness of what's going wrong and how your body is talking to you. This is the education we all desperately need, but no one's really teaching us, which is why I have the Clear the Fog course in the membership and why there's the root cause test to help in a huge symptom test to figure out what's really going on and how your body is starting to talk to you. Because before you die, before you have a heart attack, before you get cancer, your body will whisper before it screams at you. But most people don't know how to listen to the whispers. A lot of people will tell you the way to fix adrenal fatigue is just taking a generalized supplement protocol. But that alone will not do it. Just kidding, unless you take my supplement protocol, that's $300, no, $3,000. And then the supplements after that are $650 per month for 12 months at a minimum. And if you get side effects, it means it's working. So just keep going or double the dose. And if you get heart palpitations, then you might die. And yes, I'm being totally sarcastic, but that's how a lot of people are trained from social media and from even practitioners sometimes. They tell you, oh, if you're having a bad reaction, it's a die-off reaction, it's a Herxheimer reaction. It means it's working. Keep going. Let me tell you what, if you get a bad reaction to a supplement, you should not be taking it. Period. At least consult a practitioner who you have trust in. But there are supplement protocols that can help you. If you go to my website, drbradleycampbell.com, there is on there in the menu, there is a supplement store, and you create a FullScript account, you can get supplement discounts, and what's even better is if you remember, you get them wholesale price with 30% off, which is pretty amazing. But you go to the FullScript, you create an account, log in, and then what's really cool is there are protocols for your high and low adrenal function. So depending on what stage you're in, might tell you what to take. Again, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. But if you go to some of those community plans, you can see what you're supposed to do. So let me see if I can find them. I logged into the wrong account here. Let me load this up. Switch account. Yep, community plans. You can see all community plans. There's tons of protocols on there to help. And so there's high and low adrenal protocols, which I'll talk about in the membership video, and some of the more fine-tuning things for practitioners of what to do with adrenal problems. But what do you actually do? Let's go to page 142 of the book, chapter 12 in the medical plan. So, 8 main things to do. So number 1, cut out excess caffeine. Excess drugs of any kind will make it extremely hard to heal your adrenals. You really need to be sober at least 6 days a week to heal them. Having caffeine is like throwing gasoline on that fire that's warming up those kidneys. So if you want to feel super adrenalized, take a lot of caffeine. And caffeine will create stage 1 of adrenal problems, and over time then create stage 2 and 3. It also, if you take too much caffeine before bed, might turn into the bonus adrenal problem, the owl. So if you want to be an owl, just caffeinate all night. But some first responders and police and people need to do that, nurses, etc. But it's really not great for your health. People who don't sleep well and are in that owl stage tend to die earlier, get more cancer, get more chronic health issues and heart disease and mental health problems. So if that is you, try not to be there for long. And the best advice I can hand is slowly figure out how to switch careers or switch your work hours to a different daytime shift. As nice as those nighttime shifts can be and the benefits and the bonuses you get, it's really not optimal for your health. Now, there are some people who have very strong adrenals constitutionally and they might be able to handle it, but for most people, it's not gonna be good for them. Number 2, excess or deficient mental emotional stress. So if you have those issues in your tissues, or you're experiencing stress currently, or you have experienced a lot of stress in the past, that's something to work on. Number 3, excess sugar. If you're consuming way too much sugar or salt, then gotta work on mitigating that. Number 4, if your sleep is poor, must work on that. Number 5, too intense of exercise or not enough exercise. If you're doing HIIT training or marathon training or ultra marathon training or just working out to the point of exhaustion, or if you're a professional athlete, you probably are overtraining and pushing your body super hard. That can create adrenal stress. If you have a deficiency of exercise, it's also not good. So sometimes you need to talk to a practitioner about how to navigate that and support your body as best as possible to achieve your goals. But remember, performance is not health. We see these high performance, high functioning, highly successful people, and we think that they're healthy, but they're actually not. Oftentimes the CEOs, the executives, the people who are working 70, 80 hours a week are extremely imbalanced with extreme adrenal fatigue, or at least in stage 1, in highly dysfunctional stage 1. But we think that's health because they have the most money, they get the most success. But often the people who get extreme stress have extreme dysfunction and are extremely mentally or physically or unwell in their mind, body, spirit, in their structural, chemical, and emotional health. Number 6, alcohol or marijuana required to fall asleep. Not good. You should not be dependent on a drug or a substance in order to have normal cortisol awakening rhythms. And your circadian rhythm should not be dependent on drugs in order to function or have energy or feel good about yourself. Number 7, nutritional deficiencies. Number 8, excess medication toxicity. So if you're taking more than 1 or 2 medications, or you're taking Tylenol or NSAIDs, ibuprofen all the time, that can create major problems. So what else? Sleep. Over time, that kidney yang deficiency can turn into yin deficiency, where you need more rest and more coolant and more relaxation. The way that I healed my own adrenal fatigue after doing 10 degrees and working to learn 10 different degrees and still finishing those 10 degrees in my 20s, and now in my 30s I'm still working on finishing them. What I had to do for extreme adrenal fatigue and burnout was sleep more than 12 hours a day. I had to sleep 9 hours at night, and I had to take 2 to 4 hours of naps during the day. Sometimes I would even sleep 16 hours a day, and my body was craving it. Now, a lot of people are told not to nap. They're in stage 1. They're told, that they're a human doing, not a human being, and that their worth comes from everything that they're doing. But that's the farthest thing from the truth. The other thing is that your adrenals relate on a mind-body level in Chinese medicine to your purpose. I'll talk more about this for the members, but there's only so much that I want to say publicly. But what I will say is if you don't feel excited about life, if you don't feel like you have purpose or anything that brings you excitement or healthy adrenaline, that is a major red flag to start working on. A lot of people are in that high adrenal state and they're in a catabolic state, which means their body is slowly breaking down. High cortisol, too much or too little of anything is bad, and high cortisol prolonged for 2 too long of a time will actually break down the tissues in your body, which is what we see with perimenopause and menopause and aging. People are aging very poorly, not because of the lack of nutrients or they're starving, but because they are in a high adrenal or an adrenal dysfunction for prolonged periods of time. So when I hear perimenopause, to me, that's basically a mislabel of adrenal or thyroid dysfunction. So if someone has perimenopause, which is most people these days, when you work on their adrenal and their thyroid and slowly build it back up with trophic remedies, we talk about in the membership, that's when someone really starts to heal. That's when someone really starts to improve and really get better over time. So I hope that gives you some actionable things to do. I hope it inspires some of you to consider joining the membership where you can get your questions answered by me on a weekly basis and really understand how the adrenals relate to not just your adrenals, but the whole endocrine axis, from your hypothalamus and pituitary in your brain, to your thyroid, to your adrenals, to your gonads, whether it's your ovaries or your testes or all of that, and even your kidneys. Everything relates to everything else. But yes, adrenal fatigue is real. We've gone through how to identify if you have it and what to start doing to fix it. That should be a good starting point. The protocol on the full script should also help you quite a lot. And consider joining the membership for even more tools, more fine-tuning, more understanding, because it doesn't make sense to just blame your past, to blame the state of agriculture and food and grocery stores, to blame poor air quality, to blame tap water, to blame, poor lighting, to blame all the things that we are not well adapted to because our nature, our internal nature, is not being well represented these days, and we're not living in harmony between our internal and external nature. So instead of blaming other people or things or external sources or the government or health officials or modern medicine, why not start to take responsibility? Because that action will give you a little bit of purpose to start healing your adrenals. Members, next part is coming up for you.